We had to reschedule a guest today. No big deal. No big deal. Talk to Zach Hanshu in the not too distant future, we hope, here on the pod. And today we pivot back instead into the value of the totals, guys. Is there any? If so, what is it? How do we pick them? How do we miss on some of them? Because last year in the old man squad, there were 6 guys that I listed as dudes I would draft with a bit of a stronger eye on totals than on per game. Not all the way. Not like every single one of them wasn't there, but half of them were totals only, basically, meaning these are guys that I thought would lose to their ADP on the per game side, but still beat it in totals. And I'll tell you this, before we even pull the page up for those that are watching on the video side, or before we give you any names for those listening just on the audio after edition, it's a mixed bag. And that type of player, the one where I didn't even think the per game side was going to win, goose eggs, both fail. So there is very much a lesson to be learned on this one. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, everybody. It's June the 12th, midway through the week. I think our 5th week of the show. Holy crap, that's a long way to go. We had, I think, close to 2,000 episodes all told on the old feed. We bounced around because we did like a year and a half at Libsyn. Maybe it was 2 years. Might have been 2 years on Libsyn.com. And then we moved the show over to Red Circle, and it lost the episode numbers from before that. I mean, we did every weekday between basically the beginning of 2017 and now. But then there were also those bonus episodes. I don't really know how many episodes of Fantasy NBA Today I did. I think it was close to 2,000. So it's pretty weird that today's show is effectively episode 23. Woo! Clean slate. Tabula rasa, I believe is that Latin? I forget what context I learned that in. In any event, hi, I'm Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter. You can find Old Man Squad on Twitter at Old Man Squad. Hard, I know. Some shows dropped on the Old Man Squad Sports Network today. The Unrestricted Area had an episode drop today from Ray and Mike. Jeff Lambert had an episode drop today. That was of the Going for Two Live. We had a Kings Weekly episode drop yesterday, I believe. And then, of course, my good buddy Joe Orico's show. I did that before. I don't know why I want to move the accent on my buddy's name. Joe Orico and his 90 Feet From Home, they're dropping every day. That's Monday through Friday. He also had a special episode yesterday with CBS's Frank Stample. You should check that one out. These are all on the Old Man Squad Network. OMS. That's our deal right now. All right, so let's get into the fun here, or lack thereof in certain instances. The Old Man Squad totals board was a treasure trove of really nice hits and near disastrous misses. There was like almost no middle ground for this one, other than maybe one guy. But let's just start at the top. Those that are watching live, you guys can see all the names on the list. Those that are listening, we're just going to go through one by one, so you'll have I don't know, you'll get surprised, I suppose. First name on the board with an ADP of 19 was Mikal Bridges. He was one of the players, and there were 2 of them on this list, where I did not think they were going to beat their mark on the per game side. And I distinctly regret both of them now. The other one is the second name on the list, and we'll get to him in just a moment. Bridges, I thought his per game rank was going to be in the early 3rd round. But by totals, it felt like, given the fact that he's just a dude who plays in every damn ball game, that's his freaking thing. And it didn't change this year, by the way. That actually did happen for Bridges. But what didn't happen was any kind of legitimate fantasy value. Yucky. It was yucky. He was number 91 per game, just under 20 points per game, 2.7 threes, 4.5 boards, 3.6 assists. That stuff was all fine, I suppose. A steal, not great. 43.5%, though. Pretty high volume shooting from the field, 81.5% at the free throw line. This was like extraordinarily problematic, doesn't even really do it justice. The issue, of course, for Bridges was that in his time in Brooklyn last year, after the trade, he took about 18.5 shots per game. But more than the fact that he took 18.5 shots per game, which I don't think any of us thought was really a sustainable number, was the fact that he shot 47.5% on all of those shots and has been, through his career to this point, a 48% field goal guy. 37.5% from three-point land, which, by the way, didn't change this year. And his rookie season, he shot 81% at the free throw line. But since then, he was at 84.5, 84, 83.5. He was at 90 basically last year, 89 and change. And this year, he was back down at 81.5. Rebounds stayed constant. Assists were actually a little bit higher. Some of that was, more minutes, but a lot of it was just more touches. Turnovers were also a career high. Steals were tied with what he put up in Brooklyn last year in the more offensive-minded role. So I don't think you could look at the one from his time in Brooklyn last season and say we expected that to change. The big thing here for Bridges, why did the formula completely fall apart, was that he stopped being able to shoot from two-point land and from the free throw line, which, mind you, is, technically two-point land. It's inside the three-point line. He just stopped being able to make two-pointers. Shot profile changed some, yes. That's going to be a problem. He lost, having one of the best point guards of all time and an actual ball gravity guy on his team with him, because in Brooklyn, he was supposed to be some of those things. And he simply wasn't. Yes, he played in all 82 games again. So even though he was number 91 on a per game basis, at least you could kind of go back to the bank and say, all right, well, at least by totals, he was number 55. Still terrible, still nowhere near his ADP of, end of second round. By the time the fantasy draft season had pretty much wrapped up, he was just later than number 19. But, not team wrecking type of status the way the per game side was. Like, if he missed any ball games, he would have been probably the worst pick in fantasy basketball. But because he played in all 82, he was able to shed that particular label. So what do you do with a guy like a Bridges going forward? A guy who has not missed a game in his NBA career, I think. Right? I think he's played in all of them, and then he even played in 83 last season because he got traded from Phoenix to Brooklyn, and Brooklyn had more games left than the Suns did, and blah, blah, blah. He never misses a game, until he does. But to this point, he has not missed a basketball game. So, we're talking about 7 seasons now. We can look at the next year and assume he stays healthy. Okay, we can't know for sure, but compared to his peers, odds are he's going to be healthier than most of them. Can we assume the field goal percent comes back? I think a little bit. 47.5% in Brooklyn last year, down to 43.5% this season, even though the shot profile really didn't change all that much. In fact, from last year in Brooklyn to this year, the 3-pointers were higher. Yeah, 7.2 3-pointers out of about 16 shots per game instead of 6.7 out of 18.5 shots per game. So taking more 3-pointers was definitely a part of it, but it wasn't everything. And, you got more 3-pointers out of the ordeal, so there's that. Can you assume the free throw percent comes back a little bit? Probably. Is it enough to get him back up where he needs to be? Well, now that I don't really have the right answer to, or any answer, frankly, because I don't know where he's going to get drafted next season. None of us do. He's certainly not going to go in the top 20 again, but is he going to fall to like frickin' 90 where he was per game? No, I don't think so. He's still a guy that I think teams are going to assume is going to get around 20 points per game. He was at 19.6 this year, so he'll get drafted somewhere. My hope with Bridges is that he gets drafted in the 50 to 65 range, which feels like a possibility. And then if anything changes in his scenario, that can obviously shake the board up a little bit. But if he falls into that range, I think you've got a shot to kind of claw back a little bit. Because now you're drafting a guy. Let's say he gets drafted around 50. Would we consider doing it there? Yeah, I think I would. Because the difference between 90 and 50 for him was pretty much the percentages. Like the other stuff would have more or less been fine. If he shoots 47.5% from the field instead of 43.5%, 4% better there, that becomes a neutral instead of his worst negative or very, very, very small negative. Free throw goes back to being an actual substantial positive instead of like just above neutral. Points goes up considerably, 1 to 2 probably when you factor in the free throws and the field goal percent. 3-pointers, argue it stays about the same because his percentage there was relatively consistent. And then I think, assume rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks stays about the same. But to jump from 90 to 50, that's pretty much all it takes. You get the shots to fall again, and then you talk about basically 3 effectively categories all go up by a pretty good amount. So would I draft him again? Not at 20, but at 50. Is that where he goes? I don't know. Next name on the list was another player that I had with a per game ranking lower than his ADP, and that was Desmond Bane. Now, the problem with Bane was sort of the flip side of this Mikal Bridges endeavor. Desmond Bane was actually pretty good on the per game side, but missed half the season, or just under that. He only played 42 games this year, but he averaged almost 24 points, 3.3 threes, 4.4 boards, 5.5 assists, a steal, half a block. That's the same there as Mikal Bridges. 46.5% from the field and 87% at the free throw line. We're basically now talking about what we wanted Mikal Bridges to be, but wasn't. We wanted him to put up Desmond Bane numbers, and instead, Bridges couldn't shoot to save his life. Where was Bane this year? Number 34. Like, he basically was what we wanted Bridges to be. With, he took 18.5 shots per game. We probably expected Bridges to be more in like this 16.5 to 17 range. So, you dial that down from 34. This is why I was talking about Bridges near 50 next year. Actually makes a lot of sense, because if he shoots 46.5, it's 47.5% on 16.5 shots per game, that's how he gets inside the top 50. For Bane, well, the usage may have been a tiny bit too high for him, but that wasn't really the problem this year. The problem was health. 34th was the per game rank. That was back of where I thought he'd be. I thought he'd be in the mid-20s because Ja was going to be out, and so I figured he was going to do a lot of stuff. So I missed on that one by a little bit. But the big issue was obviously the health, because I thought Desmond Bane was going to be relatively healthy this year. I thought he was going to have to be and play through a bunch of stuff, and then it was more like the sort of large-scale injuries that sidelined him. But look, like if Bane played most of the year at a per-game rank of 34, he would have been an easy second-round selection by totals. But if, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts or whatever that expression is, it wasn't. Now, the problem here, let's cycle through this thing. The problem here on both Bridges and Bane is that you have no margin for error. None whatsoever. If these guys, or any guys, frankly, are expected to be worse than their ADP on the per game side, I don't know. Honestly, looking back, I don't even really know why I did this. This is stupid. It was almost like I wanted to have them in there because I was worried about missing out on a thing. But it never really made a ton of sense. Like, there was really no way that Bridges was going to get anywhere near number 19 on a per game basis. Even in a best case scenario, we were talking 20s. For Bane, I thought there was a chance while Ja was out, first 25 games, I thought there was a chance he could go a little higher than number 21. But once Ja Morant came back, the expectation should have been that Bane settled back into those 30s and then hopefully sort of coast along from there. So you have zero Zippo margin for error on these types of players, especially in the very early rounds. First 2 rounds here we're talking about. How do these guys beat their mark? The only way they beat their mark is if their per game numbers are kind of a best case scenario and they stay healthy, which was sort of the gamble that you were saying yes to in the first place. And this is why the next 3 names on the list actually make a whole lot more sense as old man squad type of players. 2 just like cataclysmic disasters here. For Bane, per game, he was fine. It wasn't bad, but he didn't beat his ADP on the per game side, and then he didn't stay healthy. So, poof, there goes your margin for error. Mikal Bridges did stay healthy, but didn't come close to his ADP on the per game side. And so, poof, margin of error gone again. Now you get into, in my opinion, 3 names that were some of the easiest names to put on the old man squad because they had both durability in their bones and the ability to beat their ADP on the per game side with, frankly, not a ton of fanfare. The first name on that list is DeMar DeRozan, who had an ADP of 44. Man, I'm getting a lot of spam phone calls these days. Are you guys getting a lot of spam phone calls these days? Silence them over and over again until I lose my mind. DeMar DeRozan had an ADP of 44 when I typed up this stuff. I believe it dropped a little bit as draft season went on. Where are you, DeMar? I got to figure out where you went. Oh, I see. Here we go. Let's sort by the right column. So DeRozan was at 44, had it, lost it. Where'd he go? There we go. Finished draft season at 46.7. So he was trending backwards, trending towards the end of the 4th round, beginning of the 5th round. Really kind of stayed in that range. So end of the 4th round. And right from the outset, like DeMar DeRozan had a lot of scenarios where he beats that 44 per game ranking. And sure enough, he did it again. He was number 31 this year. 24 points, 4.3 rebounds, 5.3 assists, just under 1 3-pointer, 1.1 steals, 0.6 blocks, 48% from the field, 85 high volume at the free throw line. He did it again, ladies and gentlemen. He did it again. And he just keeps doing it again and again and again and again. And even though there was some slight erosion last year to this year, he shot 48% instead of 50. 50, by the way, was never really a number that you could expect from him. I know he did it 2 seasons in a row with the Bulls, but career 47. And really, since he settled into the modern iteration of DeMar DeRozan, he'd been around 48. He had a 48, then he had a 53, then a 49, then a 50, then a 50, now at a 48. All of this stuff is very effectively the same. You can't say, oh, he was a 50%er for 2 years, so it's exactly what he's going to be this year. He did, by the way, make more 3-pointers this season than in prior years, and that's probably why his overall field goal percent was a little bit lower. But, the free throws were good, not even as great as they have been at times. Rebounds, same. Assists, same. Steals, same. Blocks, actually a little bit better, believe it or not. Turnovers, lower. And so when you look at a guy like DeMar DeRozan, and you can play this freaking game over and over and over again, he's just a guy that had wiggle room. He was number 28 per game last year, and there was really no reason to think that his numbers were going to change all that much. He was number 26 the year before that. Those are the 2 seasons he shot 50%. Year before that, he was number 42, shooting 49.5% from the field while basically refusing to block any shots. And his usage has gone up. That was the last year in San Antonio. He's done more consistently in Chicago. than those last couple seasons with the Spurs. After existing in the late 20s for 2 years in a row, you could pretty much bank on the idea that he's going to end up within like one round of that. And yet, his ADP, when I typed this up, was 44, and it finished at 47. Why was his ADP 47 after he had been a late 20s guy for 2 seasons in a row? What was the expectation for Chicago? What was this massive changing of the guard going to be that just wasn't? And I get it. Zach LaVine wasn't there most of the season. But guess what? Kobe White just stepped in and took all those damn shots. It was almost a 1-to-1 thing. It wasn't like DeMar suddenly got a whole lot more to do. DeMar's DeMar. He did a little bit more, but DeMar's DeMar. Say that over and over again, you end up with your head spinning off its axis. And the best part of all, for those that drafted DeMar DeRozan, once again, extraordinarily durable. First season in Chicago, he missed 6 ball games. Second season in Chicago, he missed 8. This most recent season, he missed 3. He's played in basically 90% of his ball games almost every year of his career. Not every single one, but almost. Pillar of consistency, pillar of durability, even this late. Even this late. Dude was born in 89. There aren't that many guys in the NBA that are born in the 80s anymore. And yeah, at some point, I mean, he's going to be 35 in about a month. 2 months, sorry. At some point, he's going to slow a little bit, but he hasn't really shown yet. There was no true sign that DeMar was any worse this season than any other year in his career. He didn't have any more trouble getting to his spots. He didn't have any more trouble hitting the shots when he got to his spots. He even leaned into the analytics side a little bit more with some 3-pointers. Go figure. And one of the career best turnover seasons for him. So the beauty of DeMar DeRozan, beat his ADP on the per game side, 47-31. Played in 79, we just mentioned this again, 79 ball games. So, yeah, if you're expecting me to say a totals number that's better than the per game number, you're damn right. He was number 14 by totals this year. Dominated his ADP. And this is why these totals, guys, don't say we. It's not we, Dan. It's me. Dan, need to do a better job of separating these guys out. Because the guys that you expect to beat their ADP per game and remain durable, those might be the most important guys of all. DeMar DeRozan this year was quietly one of the better picks in fantasy basketball. Not the best. We don't want to take anything away from, Chet Holmgren or Tyrese Maxey, or before he got hurt, a Scotty Barnes. I call him Scotty Barnes. Or frankly, frickin' Kawhi Leonard finished number 6 by totals after all that. Can't take anything away from those dudes. But DeMar at number 14 by totals, drafted in the 40s, nobody's even talking about it because it's boring. But boring can win. That's a late round pick who finished early second. That's a winning frickin' play. Next name on the board was a relatively effective winning play also, and that's Nikola Vucevic again, who, mind you, did take a step back on the per game side this year. Vuce didn't quite get into that upper stratosphere where he has been before. He was number 50 per game. And the funny thing is, not that many things changed for him. His ADP finished at 47.5, pretty much right around DeMar. By the way, it dropped to 50 in the season. Also, interestingly, on the Vooch thing, that actually isn't, I don't think that's entirely right. Because his ADP, as I typed it up here, you can see it on the board if you're watching along, was 57. So I don't know what the hell he's doing back up at 47. That's just not where it was at the end of the draft season. He bounced around. Or maybe my list there was the pre-rank. His pre-rank might have been 57. And so the ADP was sliding Yeah, that makes more sense. I think I might have been using the wrong word. That was the pre-rank of 57. So his ADP, which was pretty consistently in the mid-40s, was midway through a precipitous free fall that finished near 50. But if you drafted him, like if you were in a league that was drafting near the end of fantasy draft season, Vooch was going 5th round, not 4th. It was always 5th. He was going in the 50s. Because once they moved his pre-rank to 57, nobody was taking him basically before 50. One of the last drafts I did, he went at 54. And that's kind of the way I think you need to look at him. So per game, admittedly, I thought he'd be better. I thought he'd be in the late 30s. I had him at 38 per game. He didn't quite get to that mark. That's okay. It is what it is. In fact, like his shots per game was up this past year. And it was really more the fact that other guys in the NBA got more effective around him. Like Vooch's game didn't change all that much year over year. He went from 52% shooting back down to 48.5%, but almost everything else stayed about the same for him, at least, when you compare it to his Chicago seasons. Field goal percent was the same as his first year with the Bulls. 3-pointers was down slightly. Rebounds about the same. Assists, turnovers, steals, blocks, pretty much same year over year. Little lower than his first season in Chicago. And maybe that's a sign of a man trending down, the steals and blocks not being at 1 and 1 and instead being at 0.7 and 0.8. But a lot of guys in the NBA just got better around him. So instead of Vooch being a mid to late 30s guy, 5 to 10 guys got better. He didn't change, and so he fell 10 slots. Okay. But the beauty here, again, is that while I thought him being, pre-rank of 57, again, drafted in the mid-50s, it almost felt like he was a near lock to be at that spot or better, and he did. If you drafted him at 54, he was 4 slots better, which is, again, effectively as a tie, but certainly wasn't a miss. And then, again, Vooch played 76 out of 82 damn ball games this year. 3rd season in a row, he's been at about 88% of his team's games played or higher. All of his seasons in Chicago. In fact, last year he played in all 82. This year, 76 out of 82. So, number 50 per game, number 33 by totals. I was a little high on him, but not by much. I was 1 round high, but he still beat his ADP per game by half a round, effectively. Not ADP. Beat his pre-rank by half a round and beat his pre-rank on the total side by 2 full rounds. Was he a league winning type? No. But was he a winning type? Yes. Next name on the board is another one that I thought would be better per game and totals, and he was, and that's Austin Reaves with the Lakers. Oh my God, another junk call. How many of these are going to come in the middle of the show? Now, Reaves is always going to be a little bit of a dice roll. His pre-rank was 98, and he's a guy that doesn't get any real defensive stats, 1.1 total on that side. So he was going to have to do it all with free throw percent and basically like points and maybe some assists because he wasn't going to rebound a whole lot. And that's a tall order. That's kind of the shooting guards rundown. And he got there. Per game rank was 88, so he beat his pre-rank by a little bit there. Pretty damn close to where he was going to go. I had his per game rank at 84, which I'm going to just say we got that one right. And then, what's that? Played in all 82 ball games? Yes, thank you very much. Austin Reaves played in all 82 ball games, so by totals, he was number 53. Way better than I expected there. I thought I was pretty bullish on him. Put him at 67 by totals, and he was 53. Beat it by a round. A little bit more than that, even. So, what do we take away from these 3 guys? And obviously, things can change if the Bulls move some bodies around, if the Lakers swing a big trade or whatever it is. But from this past year, the lesson from those 3 guys, before we get into the last one, which was another miss, but who cares? He was an 11th rounder, so throw him off into the ocean and move on. The lesson is, if you're going to go totals hunting, you got to look for a guy that you also think has a better than 50-50 shot to beat his pre-rank or ADP or whatever board you're looking at on the per game side also, not just totals. Because if you find a player that you think is going to beat their ADP or pre-rank on the per game side, and you have faith in their durability, you may very well be sniffing around, you may be truffle hunting some of the guys that have the best shot to obliterate their marks. Austin Reaves pretty well obliterated his mark. Like for head-to-head leagues, he was awesome this year. A guy you drafted probably in the 9th round who gave you 5th round totals numbers. That's great. I get it. For Games Cap Roto, you want the per game mark. You're not as worried about how if the guy's going to play 82 ball games. Austin Reaves, frankly, was not as valuable in per game or in Games Cap Roto as he was in daily unlimited head-to-head. Not unlimited moves, just unlimited, roster realignment. With streaming and all that nonsense. He's a guy that never this whole year gave you a 0 and put up numbers that were ever so slightly better than where he was drafted. Not by a lot, by a little bit, but good enough. That is actually valuable in head-to-head. An 8th round per game guy you can just plug right in and say, all right, you give me 82 games of this dude? Great. He's my 8th best starter, and he's there every day. With Roto, that type of player is a little bit more of a roster filler type. He's a little bit better than that, so I don't want to take too much away from Reaves. But, if you're talking about like a round to 2 rounds deeper than Reaves, now you're getting into the guys that are just filler. And those guys still actually have some value on the head-to-head side if they're healthy. But Reaves is a guy who's like a net neutral type of player, but you need those guys on the head-to-head side. You need guys that are going to soak up games played. When their team has 4 games, they have 4 games. So DeRozan, Vooch, Reaves, those 3 guys that, even looking back at the board here, they were guys that I had listed as beating their marker on both per game and total side, and they each did it. Vooch, Reaves, per game side, they didn't beat it by much, but because they were durable, they smoked their draft slot by totals. DeMar beat the daylights out of both sides. And then finally, I had Bruce Brown on the list, but I was never all that super confident in this one. He was pre-rank of 126, so you didn't exactly have to go get him. He was a late-round flyer. I thought had a shot in Indy, forget the Toronto part of the proceedings, to go put up numbers just inside the top 100 and then do it while playing every day. Didn't turn out to be the case. Thought he had a shot to be sort of like a poor man's version of Austin Reaves with more rebounds and less scoring. Didn't turn out to be the case. He was not the backup point guard the way that he was in Denver. Indy used him very differently. It didn't allow for much in the way of fantasy stuff. So we gave him like 6 weeks and then said, nope, not happening. And on we went. I don't have any real regrets about putting Bruce Brown on the board because on your 11th round, you're starting to take some shots. That one just didn't work. Again, he would have been a guy that was more relevant in head-to-head than Roto because I never thought he was going to be better than an 8th round, late 8th round, frankly, on the per game side. In Roto, you're pretty much hunting guys that you think can give you as strong per game numbers as humanly possible. Remember the Games Cap darlings? Those are the guys where you're like, I don't give a if they play games, I want guys that are going to go smash their per game side. So Kawhi Leonard was that guy in there. Porzingis was a guy in there. I don't know why Jimmy Butler wasn't in that list. He should have been. It made no sense that he wasn't, but he's a guy that would have been in that list. The thing that I want to do differently, because today actually does wrap up the Old Man Squad review part of our off-season shows, and they got a million other things to do here. But the thing that I want to do going forward, and feel free, you guys can yell at me about this if I forget to do it, is I'm going to get the Old Man Squad put out as early as humanly possible this year. Seasons past, I tended to put it out about a week before the season started for a number of reasons. One of the main ones being I didn't want it to muck up anything that was going on at Sports Ethos because it wasn't affiliated with that, and it would have been very confusing for followers and premium buyers and all that kind of good stuff. So that's why it came out kind of late. This year, not attached to anything being sold. I'm not, old man squad / free agent type. So it'll come out earlier, and then we'll adjust it as things go, because as ADPs change and pre-ranks change and all that good stuff, guys go from being a target to not really being a target. And we will have a final old man squad board with that very last preseason rank spot. And I think that's probably what this was. I may have, what did I write down? Did I put the ADP? No, I think that was a pre-rank. Yeah, I was reading it wrong. So the number on the left, for those that have been watching along and those that have been listening and following along, the numbers that I gave you is not ADP. That was their pre-rank on Yahoo when I put this board together. So that's why it jumped, 10 slots for some of these guys. Like Vooch had a pre-rank of 57 when I built the board, but his ADP was still 47 because the pre-rank hadn't fully kicked in mathematically. You guys know what I'm talking about. Even if you don't, we're going to go over it so many times that you certainly will. Okay, that's it. That's Old Man Squad review. We're done with that now for the offseason, which means we can move into some other stuff now, which there's a lot of stuff. I don't want to do team reviews until we get through a chunk of free agency because it feels a little bit obsolete now. Like, I could give you a Lakers recap, but I don't know if D'Angelo Russell is going to be on the team. So what the hell's the point? Here's what Anthony Davis did. Okay, what does that mean? Squat. Here's what Austin Reaves did. Okay, that's great, but it's not about what I think is going to happen going forward. It's about what do we learn from how this season went and how we handicapped it. That's fine, but I can do all of that after free agency. I'm going to go through the teams one by one at that point. It's something I've always wanted to do in the offseason, but I tended to run out of content in May. So I ended up having to do that in May, and then July hit, and I was like, well, 12 of those 30 shows per fart sound effect. Don't have to worry about that. Coming up here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, we're going to get some guests rolling once again after you guys listen to me shout into the void for a few days. That will be fun. And the draft is coming up 2 weeks from today. Yeah, it's 2 weeks from today. Sorry, guys. Forgot today was Wednesday. I'm turned around today. My kid finished up school, and now I don't know what the hell day it is. 2 weeks from today. And then it's a 2-day event, if you want to call it that. Event being a loose term. It's a 2-day thing. But frankly, what happens in the draft is almost less important than for us to understand which players in said draft might creep onto fantasy radars. And then I think it's also important that we know which guys are going to get onto fantasy teams and maybe shouldn't be. That will likely start. We're going to do some shows on that starting next week. You guys know that I don't prep for the NBA draft, but luckily there are some very smart people out there that do. We'll have them on the show. We'll pick their brains about players that we should be keeping an eye on. Specifically, I'm going to be asking every single one of them one same question. Well, we'll have a whole bunch of other stuff that I ask them, but one same question I will ask every single guest that comes on to talk about the NBA draft. And that is, are there any big men who do big men stuff, but don't suck at the free throw line? Because those are the guys we tend to at least, I don't say target, but those are the guys that we give a chance on fantasy draft night. Please, Lord, like, rate, subscribe, however you're taking in the show. If it's after the fact on an audio network, subscribe and rate. Those 5-star reviews are a big deal. Subscriptions are even bigger. If you're watching live on YouTube, hit the like button and writes up the... I don't care about it. Honestly, this isn't really a time where live matters all that much anyway. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, please leave a comment. That's actually kind of a cool little way for a video to get a little bitty bump in the YouTube algorithm. If you guys comment on it, and then obviously like it, subscribe. So YouTubers like, subscribe, comment. Everybody else, rate and subscribe. And I'll follow you, or I'll find you guys over on social media in between. Again, I'm at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris, Old Man Squad is the Twitter handle of the network. That one's much easier to spell. It's just those 3 words all together. Squish. Looks like Oldman Squad. Big fans of Gary Oldman. Big fans. Started a squad about it. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. So long.